The Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will take the stage tonight in Chicago to formally accept his nomination as Kamala Harris's pick for vice president and introduce himself to voters on a scale like no other. It is a critical introduction. While a subsection of the internet has embraced Tim Walz as a Midwestern dad figure, about 4 in 10 Americans actually say they still don't know enough about the former geography teacher to form a strong opinion of him. This is what AP has reported as well. Now, though he ranks high in favorability generally with Democrats, he's still lacking with several key Democratic coalitions, is what we can pick up on. And the vice presidential nominee Tim Walz, as well as former President Bill Clinton, are the headliners on the third day of the DNC, as the party hopes to build on the momentum that Kamala Harris has brought since joining the race a month ago. Tim Walz, by the way, also became the target of Republican criticism over how he's portrayed his National Guard service as well as his personal story.
Being inside Trump's White House was terrifying. But what keeps me up at night is what will happen if he gets back there. The guardrails are gone. The few adults in the room the first time resigned or were fired.
I'm excited to see what she does for healthcare. I am a pharmacist, and every single day I see Americans suffer to pay for medications out of pocket, and it's really heartbreaking. I am worried about her policy regarding Palestine and Gaza. I feel like she does a lot of talk, and then the next day the policy just doesn't coincide with her opinion the day before.
Well, meanwhile, the third day of the DNC kicked off with a first of its kind Vedic prayer where the priest sought blessings for a united country. Listen in.
Truth is our foundation and always prevails. Lead us from unreal to real, from darkness to the light, and from death.
Right, we have with us Voice of America's White House Bureau Chief, Patsy Widakuswara, joining us. Thanks so much, Patsy, as always, for making time for us. Well, it's game night for Coach Walz. Patsy, am I audible to you?
Yes, now I can hear you. Go ahead.
Right, I was saying it's game night for Coach Walz. In fact, polling shows that early hiccups that Tim Walz has seen, even in comparison to that, Walz has had a much smoother launch when we compare his record to his running mate, Republican J.D. Vance.
Yes, absolutely. That's true. What you said earlier about Tim Walz being accepted wholeheartedly by most Democrats is absolutely true. You can feel it here. You can feel the energy and the enthusiasm. And as you say, he's a very memeable figure. And he is really good with these zingers that put down his opponents. The larger question is whether or not Americans will have enough time to get to know him. There is less than 80 days to the election, and that's not a lot of time to introduce someone to the rest of the country. And this is his big debut. So what we know so far of Tim Walz, you've already outlined some of it, his service in the National Guard, his background as a teacher, as a former coach. And as he characterized himself, he is this Midwestern dad. And this is certainly something that Democrats try to highlight as they try to provide a counter to this kind of toxic masculinity narrative that many critiques of the Make America Great movement under Donald Trump tries to attach to that part of the conservative base. So what they're offering, what the Democrats are offering, is this counter narrative of Tim Walz as a helpful male to female cause, as somebody who's not insecure and not afraid to play a supporting role to a strong woman. So it'd be really interesting to see and listen to his speech tonight.
Right. Patsy, also, like many say, this is not 2016 or 2020. The stakes are much higher. But many Americans believe that they had actually never heard of Tim Walz until Harris chose him to join the ticket. In fact, in his first few weeks of campaigning, I want to ask you, has he been able to charm supporters with his background as a teacher and football coach? Has he been able to help balance Harris's coastal background as a cultural representative of Midwestern states whose voters she needs this fall?
certainly for Democrats and certainly for young progressive Democrats, right? I mean, he is just all over social media right now. But the question is, the rest of the country who's not so tuned in on Instagram, who's not so tuned in on YouTube and all these channels where Tim Walz is becoming this just popular memeable figure alongside with these other, coconut memes and other snippets that influencers put on social media. Influencers, by the way, have a really special spot here at the Democratic National Convention. I was just walking around earlier and I saw this lounge. About 200 social media influencers were invited by the White House and by the Harris campaign to come and produce content from the DNC. And they are getting, to be honest, a lot better treatment than we, the actual press, the actual media are getting. So this is certainly something that shows you how much the Harris campaigns underscores the strength of social media in this particular election cycle. And yes, you're absolutely right. Is Tim Walz going to be able to charm the rest of the country? That is the big question and the big homework for Democrats and the Harris campaign.
Right. The week in Chicago's United Center, it has been a balancing act for Harris and other Democrats. But Patsy, you were mentioning that there's a bit of a star lineup of performers. Take us through the plan of action.
Yeah, so the big keynote speaker other than Tim Walz is, of course, Bill Clinton.
Yes.
He is there to showcase the continuity of, former Democratic presidents supporting Kamala Harris. We had Barack Obama yesterday. We had, of course, Joe Biden earlier this week, as well as, Jason Carter. He's the grandson of Jimmy Carter, who is now 99 years old and is unable to speak on stage. But as far as performers go, there's Stevie Wonder, there is John Legend. We are going to have Pink tomorrow. So this is, of course, something that Democrats are really proud of. And they try to contrast that with the experience at the Republican National Convention last month, where you don't see former Republican presidents. You don't even see former Trump administration officials. What you see is a lineup of Trump family members. So this is something that Democrats want to highlight. There is continuity. There is support from the entertainment industry coming out here in Chicago tonight.
Well, the Democrats want to harness the exuberance that has swept over their party since Joe Biden stepped aside, while also making clear to their supporters that the election will be a fierce fight. As always, Patsy Widakuswara, thank you so much for joining us with the latest from the DNC in Chicago.
My pleasure.